The biggest scare at the moment is AI will replace CS professionals. I just don't believe that's true. With CS, it is all about relationship building, and you can't get that with an AI tool.
Welcome to the Success Revenue Podcast, the only podcast in the Middle East that brings you leaders in customer success, account management, sales, and go-to-market to share ideas, perspectives, and valuable learnings on how to successfully drive revenue, delight customers, and take it to the next level.
We are your host. I'm Haidar Assad, CEO of RevSetter, the customer management platform. And with me, I have my amazing co-host, Ive Ferrero, CS executive, leader, and advisor. And we're super excited to bring you a long list of guests on this season of the Success Revenue Podcast. And today we have a real treat for you, an executive and leader that spans multiple continents. And she will talk today about several things, including how CS has evolved over the last few years, and more importantly, where we'll go in the next several years. We'll speak about the introduction of AI into CS, into go-to-market, and into business. And we'll also get many tangible pieces of advice for CSMs and leaders out there in terms of how they can develop in their career. So very excited for today's conversation. Ivy, someone we know, we spent some time with as well, not too long ago in Amman and Jordan. So yeah, very excited about that. How about you? How's everything?
Yeah, I'm super excited. Jomilsa is a gem. And yeah, I feel like it's been amazing because the past 2 weeks we have recorded with, if you want to say it, like CS colleagues. So yeah, it's amazing to be able to bring the community together and showcase their genius.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. Actually, I had a couple of people reach out to me, listeners of ours, are asking about if we're going to do a meetup soon or like arrange something for our listeners, which was cool to see here in Dubai, actually. So I told them that's something hopefully going into the new year, we'll be able to plan out some stuff for the community and our listeners. But it's good to see kind of that our guests and all their valuable insights that they're sharing with everyone is really resonating and helping people learn some new things and develop. So that's cool.
Yeah, super cool. I feel like a physical event is definitely due. I was hoping we could have done it in October, but there was so much happening that I think next year we'll have a better opportunity to plan something.
I think so as well. People, I said keep an eye out. When it's time, we'll announce it and put something together. That should be good. But yeah, I'm excited about today's conversation. We're gonna Jomilsa has so much experience from the UK and Europe, and now obviously here and big companies and her own stuff with coaching. I feel it'll be a lot of very tangible things for people to take away here.
Yeah, I'm very excited. Should we bring her in?
Well, let's do it. I know she's ready to go. So let's get things started.
Okay, here we
All
go.
right.
All right, guys. I am so excited for today's guest in the podcast. Jomilsa Sousa is a seasoned customer success professional with over 8 years of experience turning CS into a true growth engine. She's helped startups and global enterprises across North America and the Middle East build scalable strategies, remove roadblocks, and drive real customer impact. In addition to her work at LexisNexis Middle East, Jomilsa is the founder of the Success Studio, a coaching and training platform helping CS professionals worldwide grow in confidence and accelerate their careers. She also mentors with Catalyst Software and Women in Customer Success and contributes to communities like Customer Success Collective and Customer Success Middle East, creating spaces for shared learning and growth. Jomilsa, I am so excited to have you in the podcast. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Jomilsa. Excited to have you on here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to have this conversation.
Amazing. So, Jomilsa, tell us a little bit more about your background, your hero story. How did you ended up in Dubai? And how did you ended up in customer success?
Customer success, it's a funny one. I ended up in customer success by accident, completely by accident. I was interviewing for a account management role, went into the interview, and I think halfway through they said, well, just to let you know, this isn't actually an account management role. it's customer success. And I thought to myself, well, what actually is customer success? And this was quite a while ago. So it wasn't really trending in the UK at the time. And once they explained it in more detail, I think something suddenly clicked in me where I kind of understood it was the piece that was missing within the whole sales cycle, especially when we're looking at post sales. So I became super intrigued from there and began working in customer success within a scale up, then moved to a global business and went back and forth between a global business and a scale up. It's now led me to Dubai. So I've been in Dubai for almost 2 years now, working with LexisNexis, and it's been fantastic. So at the moment, I'm doing a dual role of customer success and account management. And that's basically everything after post sales from onboarding to training to renewals, upsells, cross sells. And it's just been amazing so far.
Amazing, amazing. It seems like everybody in customer success just fell out of serendipity. They were in sales or they were in account management, and suddenly they found themselves in customer success. And Jomisa, you recently also started your own kind of like entrepreneur, if you want to call it like career. I believe you started the Success Studio. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, of course. Thank you. So I started the Success Studio, I think it's been a month now, so it's still very new. And I started it off the back of doing a lot of mentoring and coaching within customer success. I found that there was a gap in the market where a lot of people wanted to come into customer success, but didn't really understand what it was. So exactly the situation I was in when I was interviewing for the very first time. I also found that there's a discrepancy in how customer success is described. So a lot of people had this one vision of what customer success is like. Others had another vision and they were struggling to fill in the gaps. So, because of that, I did quite a lot of mentoring and coaching through Women in Customer Success, Catalyst, and more, and found that I actually wanted to start my own initiative, but focusing more on the Middle East instead. So, not just, focusing on markets where CS is prominent, but also focusing on developing areas and developing jurisdictions for customer success as well. So far it's been fantastic, but the main focus around it is just making sure that everyone understands customer success and how it can have a huge impact in the region as well.
That's
I love that. I feel
yeah.
like even more in the Middle East, there is so much confusion around what customer success actually is. And I know from a personal experience, I wouldn't be where I am if I didn't have coaches or mentors, people who kind of helped me to carve my way into whatever goal I wanted to have in customer success. So what you're doing, it's amazing for the community itself, and I'm sure it's going to be amazing for all the different mentees that you have.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, totally agree with that as well. And it's, you always like to see, as we all try to do as well, but kind of you're contributing so much to the community across, the readout from Ivy kind of covered a lot of different things that you do, which is amazing. And I was kind of curious because you mentioned a little bit through your kind of journey to this point and now trying to kind of give back even more through this initiative. You always had an opportunity to work across, in the UK, now in the UAE, across different markets, and kind of seeing both the CS function in different places, but also how customers kind of interact and how to work with customers. I'm kind of curious, we talked about this before, but what are some of the cultural nuances, maybe some of the ones that are really underestimated when it comes to working in these different geographies and with different types of customers here in the Middle East versus in Europe or, elsewhere?
Yeah, that's a very big question, I'd say, and a
Yeah.
very interesting one. I'd probably say it needs to be answered in two bits, to be honest. So, one element is, from an individual contributor perspective, there's lots of cultural nuances. Some are a bit more straightforward than others, such as working patterns. So, obviously, coming from the UK, we work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 or 9 to 6. And coming into the UAE, I work with customers all over the Middle East. And very quickly, you understand that not everyone works Monday to Friday. Some people work Sunday to Thursday, completely different hours. There's a time difference sometimes, depending on what country you're in. And you actually need to factor that in when you're, setting up your meetings, your renewals, for example. You need to understand, what the yearly cycle is like as well, in terms of when they do their budgets, when they do their meetings to review all their softwares, for example. So there is that nuance there that actually impacts how your scheduling goes. But I think the biggest learning so far from an individual contributor perspective is that aspect of digitalization, where in the UK and maybe in the US market as well, when it comes to communication, everything is done via emails, via, Teams messages or Zoom even. And that still works here. But what I'm finding here is that the culture is very much trust before sales. So you do need to have more of a personal relationship with people and seeing them face to face in order to get anything like a renewal done or an upsell done, because it's all about the trust process and how you fit in to what they need to achieve. So that's the biggest one. But I'd say from a leadership perspective, there's three different elements, to be completely honest, and they all merge into one. So budget is number one. So I think if you're coming from like the Western world, so from the UK, for example, Europe or the US, sometimes you don't factor in budget to actually go off and see customers. And that is such a big piece, especially like I mentioned, because the personal aspect is so much bigger than, just communicating via email and through Teams and Zoom. So you need to actually put a budget in place where your CSMs can go to visit customers. Second is that return on investment piece. So we know return on investment sometimes to be financial or timeliness, but it does actually look a little bit different here. So I've noticed that return on investment sometimes looks like continued learning or development, or just being able to function. Stability and continuity is a big thing here. So it's understanding that it looks a little bit different depending on the market, depending on the country as well. And yeah, it's just having that budget to continue being that market leader and just leading in the market as well.
Yeah. That's a great answer. And I think, like you said, there's a different perspective from an IC, an individual contributor, versus a leadership or organizationally, strategically, how to kind of approach the customer base, and they all have their nuances. So thank you for laying that out kind of clearly, because I think something that's often just generalized, what are the big differences versus actually more tangible in terms of how to actually apply that or think about it from the different perspectives. So that's really good. And kind of maybe sticking a little bit on that, but I want to kind of take it up a level to your own journey through this kind of process of, you know, throughout your career, making these different decisions. Obviously going from IC to leadership to now doing your own thing on top of that, as well as moving geographies. I'm kind of curious, have there been any inflection points throughout that journey where you kind of really like redefined what matters to you, what success looks like, what you're focused on, and any key ones that you've kind of gone through throughout that journey?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And I think success changes all the time, right? I think what has been constant to me is to actually look back and revisit the past and how you got to the point that you're in, especially when you're going into a new organization or into a new geography. It's understanding what success has looked like in the past years and how that influences success today. So I might come into a whole new organization tomorrow, for example, and say, well, success to me looks like a 10% increase in revenue in the next year, for example, not realizing that, the last year there was only 1% in revenue. And maybe there's been, some organizational changes. So maybe after looking at that, success to me would be stability for the next year. Or maybe the KPIs would change a little bit. So I think that's one element of it. And I think the second element is just understanding that success can change so quickly. So success to me today might be completely different next month and the month after, and it varies according to departments as well. So I think that's one element, but I'd also say it's the strategic focus as well that went from being a product-led department to now being an outcome-based department as well, is something that we've seen in the past. So I think that has actually led to the way that I think about success. It's no longer just about how many people are using the product or the service that we provide, but it's more so how are we helping people grow and achieve their own outcomes.
Yeah,
Mm.
fantastic.
I love that. And Jamilsa, I love to hear you talk because every time I hear you talk, I'm like, this girl knows something. You're always teaching me something. So I wanted to actually talk about something I learned through you during the recent convention, the Successify Customer Success Convention we were all a part of. So you were teaching me about the ping framework. And as the both of you guys know, I have been building a customer success function. And one thing I have been thinking a lot about is how to segment customers beyond just ARR, especially for things like capacity planning and resource allocation. And recently, Hader and I spoke about this, the fact of like creating some sort of like baseline approach. You're sorting all customers by revenue and then you break them into cohorts, and then you somehow calculate the percentage of revenue that each tier actually contributes. And then from this, likely you'll see like the top 20% make the top 60 to 80% of total revenue, which also means that 60 to 80% of your internal resources should go there as well. That alone gives you a strong baseline for prioritizing. But of course, revenue is only part of the story. And that's where your pink matrix really opened my eyes. For listeners who are unfamiliar with it, can you walk us through the matrix and maybe share a little bit on how it changed the way you prioritize or communicate with customers?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I first heard of the ping matrix a couple of years ago when I was working for Swiftly, US based, and we had quite a lot of influence around how things were just going on in the US at the time. But in terms of ping and the way that it works, it's basically split into four different functions. One of them is protect, which is the P in ping. And that just means you've got customers who are high spend but low growth. And what that means when they're low growth but high spend is, of course, you need to protect them, but there isn't as much growth right now, but there might be later on down the line. So what that means is it influences the activities you do day on day and throughout the year. It means that maybe your focus is more on engagement and touch points throughout the year to make sure that they're engaged so that if anything changes, you're the first person that they speak to. And then when you're looking at something like invest, that is high growth and high spend as well. So again, segmenting by ARR, but the actual growth potential in there. And with that, it's a little bit more strategic, right? So it might be your top account. Sometimes it's not your top account because they don't have much left to spend. But with that, you're actually focusing more on collating that return on investment, essentially showing them your business review, essentially taking them through what the ROI has been. But also it's more of a focus around, let's say, maybe companies who are a little bit new, they've gone through a restructure again. So, they're massive, but maybe just don't have the investment right now, for example. Then you want to focus on them and make sure that you can help them drive revenue. So it's showing value, making sure that they have visibility into their KPIs. It means multi-threading as well, making sure that you're speaking to different departments, different stakeholders, so that you know what the opportunities available are. So it does require a little bit more touch points. The third one is nurture. So it's a little bit more steady. It's looking at low spend and low growth. So there's not much room for growth there. They don't spend as much, but they're still very important to us, of course, as is every customer. But with nurture, it's more steady, it's more check-in based, it's more relationship managing. You can also incorporate a little bit more automation here as well. So it might be sending them automatic newsletters or check-ins that's automated. So emails and self-serving resources like that. So it could be that, they require training, and instead of you focusing your time on training them one-on-one, you do group sessions or send recorded training sessions and guides to support them instead. And the last element in that quadrant is grow, which is they've got low spend, but a high growth potential. So they might not be spending much, but we know that they have the budget to spend a lot more. And maybe there's a room of opportunity there where they don't take all of your product. So you can map that out in more detail. So with that, it's more identifying what the expansion triggers are. So like I mentioned, it could be new products. It could be that there's new departments coming in. You might want to map out their children companies in there as well. So just identifying all the opportunities so that when they do have the budget, you're ready to strike in there. So again, it's segmenting by spend and by growth, but you do have to factor in things like high touch, low touch, and a couple of other elements in there to make it work. But it just means that you're working from a revenue perspective and a growth perspective.
Mm, wow. I love that. I love that. And the other thing that I found very fascinating that you spoke about in your keynote at Successify was about the different routes that somebody can take in their career path. And I was actually very, very shocked because usually I would think that you would want to be a lead of a team and then become some sort of head and whatnot. But you spoke about the other ways that somebody can actually build a career in customer success. Not everybody needs to aim for VP. Can you break those down?
Absolutely. Yeah. I love this conversation because a lot of people just think, okay, if I want to progress, I just need to go into leadership, for example. There's nothing else I can do. And maybe your driver for progression is, financial compensation or visibility. So you can actually get that in multiple ways. So I always say sometimes you can actually make a lot more, from a financial point of view as an individual contributor than, in leadership. So there's multiple ways of going into it. You might start off as a CSE or CSA, depending on where you work, go into CSM, and then you can scale up into VP, CCO, etc. But the other direction is actually to stay as an individual contributor and work your way through to becoming senior and then enterprise CSM, strategic, etc. And that's a great career path in there as well, because it means that maybe you're focusing on what you love the most, which is maybe problem solving when it comes to customers, instead of focusing on, let's say, growing internal stakeholders, which is a little bit more challenging sometimes. So it depends on what you prefer doing. But there are also side steps as well. So you can still stay within the customer success department and work in, let's say, CS ops, which is huge at the moment with things like AI coming about. Operations is definitely needed. It just means that your customers are now internal stakeholders. So they are your CSMs, they might be marketing, product, all these people are now your clients instead of actually external stakeholders. So many different roles in there, depending on what you prefer, depending on whether you prefer to be client facing or not. You can go into implementation, onboarding. Something that I'm seeing coming up a lot as well is maybe community managers as well. So people are taking quite a lot of different steps from CS into building communities, which is something that's really important when you're trying to teach someone new technology or, forming this new brand, for example. And then community managers is something that we're seeing as well. But you can also go into product, marketing, and more. But it's just important that you always understand what people's drivers are, because if it's not, managing people, then there are other directions to take from there as well.
I feel like there's gonna be so many people relieved to hear this, that there are multiple ways of being able to make, or somebody may be able to make more money. No, I love
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, also as things are evolving with, we'll talk more about the role itself and how that's changing and developing the technology around it. We'll start seeing more and more of these kind of branched out opportunities that they can really look at within that career, which is exciting. And also, I think especially also for the Middle East, I would say, as it's still a very young function in terms of its the maturity and the development and just the companies and how big they are and how they're growing, just that the overall pie itself will become much bigger as more companies become big and invest more and more in their customers and CS. So there's just a lot of opportunities, I think, especially in the Middle East region where we're in, for that career development, which is super exciting. And I wanted to ask you, because we're going to talk about the future of CS and how it's evolving, but a key part of this obviously is the introduction of AI into everyone's lives, including businesses and including CS. If we kind of break it down a little bit, and maybe both from an CSIC perspective, but also maybe from a more leadership org perspective for CS, what are some of the things that you'd say here are some practical, impactful applications of AI or AI tools currently, versus things that are more just a hype or kind of just there for the sake of being AI, let's say.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think you used a fantastic word in that question, which is impactful. I think there's this trend of so many people saying, I just want AI because it's a trend at the moment and I need it. I need it. But what is the impact of it, right? And I think that's how leaders need to think. What is the impact into the organization? But what is the impact to my department as well? So to answer that, I would actually say when it comes to AI, it's using things that can facilitate the workload when it comes to ICs. So one thing that I love at the moment is Gong, for example. It records calls, but also uses AI to take notes for you and pick out key topics and points in there. It can analyze your calls as well to see if you're speaking too much versus the client speaking enough. So there's all these elements that allow you to kind of train yourself to become a better CSM and to listen better, but also to actually focus on the customer. I mean, I don't know how many times you've been on calls and you're trying to take notes, but listen and trying to formulate an answer at the same time. It's so complex sometimes, and it just means you miss out on key bits. So things like Gong, I think, are incredible. I think something else that's quite good, if you're using something like SharePoint, for example, they've developed AI in there as well, which means that if you've got any documents in there, such as leaflets or brochures, for example, and you're trying to put like a case study together or a proposal together, you can use AI to help you with that. And that's existing content. It's content you trust. It's just adding the functionality on top of there, which I think is fantastic. But I think, like I mentioned, it's things that are more impactful than just grabbing AI for the sake of the trend. I think the biggest scare at the moment is AI will replace CS professionals, which I'm hearing a lot, and I just don't believe that's true. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, with CS, it is all about relationship building, and you can't get that with an AI tool. So AI is here to facilitate the workload and help you analyze data, for example, and get you ready for your meetings. And it's just helping you be more impactful and have more strategic conversations with your customers.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that's such an interesting part of it. And everyone that listens to our podcast have heard me say this a lot. Like, I think the future is AI powered but human led, right? So we're going to kind of lead that development, but AI will help power and amplify everything that we're doing around it, obviously. But I think it is still an interesting thing because I think we all come from the go to market, CS kind of upbringing background. So, inherently we will have a feeling that CS will always be there, and sales in its current form, and customer experience and all these different things, because it's such a human endeavor in itself. But I think it is fair to kind of ask the question, 5 years from now, will the CS or the CSM role as we know it today even exist, or will it have changed that much because of AI and just the overall technology? And I think more and more the focus on driving revenue and having that impact on the business as well. Where do you land on that? Kind of how do you see the CSM role and CS in general developing over the next 3 to 5 years, let's say?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think with the help of AI especially, there's a lot of burden lifted from CSMs, such as, reviewing support tickets, for example, or understanding, very quickly what's happening with an account, or sorting out all the data they need to make decisions. So you do get a lot of time back. And I think because of that, we're going to see more and more like fusion of roles is what I'm thinking. At the moment, you're seeing a lot of trends where it's CSAM, which is the role that I do at the moment. So a mixture of CSM and AM. We're seeing definitely a trend in CSMs owning the number and owning the revenue as well. So I think when it comes to the future of CS and what that will look like, I think it will probably look like a dual role where you are doing the renewals and upsells and more, just because you have a lot more time and you already have the relationship with the customer. What it means is it will probably just be one big CSM team. And then you have your CS ops in there as well, helping you to actually drive the CRM, making sure that you have everything you need with your AI tools as well, and then going from there. So to answer your question, it is AI. Well, there is AI in there, but human led as well. But there is also this aspect of us being the revenue generators, which Ivy talks about a lot as well.
Very interesting. Jamisa, you made me think about something. I want to ask you this question. In the age of AI, what do you think will help somebody become indispensable for a company? So, like if you're a CSM and you want to secure your job, what would make somebody indispensable?
That's very interesting and that's amazing. I would say objection handling is one. I know it sounds a little bit silly because, you can just pop it into AI and say, how can I, negotiate this? But when you actually know who you're speaking to and you know what their pain points are, you're the only one that can actually handle objections in the right way. AI will only give you a standard use case unless you build your own bot and you explain everything in more detail. But you're the only one that understands the feeling around, the answers you're giving, or, the context that you're giving. So I think it's the human element, like we mentioned. It's the feeling around things. You can essentially try and make sense of it all and make it very transactional. But in order to be transformational, you actually need that human element to understand what all of it means. So you can get AI to essentially give you a brief about the customer and create a, let's say, business review based on all the data that you have in there. But in order for you to be impactful, you need to know what it actually means for the customer. And you can't actually do that without knowing how the customer feels and how stakeholders feel and what the impact is. So that's something that only you can do. And that's based on relationship building. Again, AI isn't going to be in every conversation. It might be a phone call that you're having, and that's where they've explained the impact of everything that you're doing, or it might be a face-to-face conversation where you've learned that information. So I think to be an impactful CSM when you've got AI, it's having that relationship building piece, which, no one can do for you.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And what sort of advice would you give to, let's say, young women? Of course, you and I have gone on this journey of building our careers as women in CS. And for young women who want to lead in CS but don't see any role models, what sort of advice would you give to them?
Yeah, this is a funny one, but I would say pivot. I think a lot of people get stuck where they are, and they get a little bit scared of maybe doing something different or something new. So I would always say pivot. I have this saying where I always think if you're not earning or learning, then maybe you shouldn't be where you are right now. Maybe you should pivot so that you are learning or you're earning or both. And so, yeah, I think pivoting is one. It's never too late to change careers completely or even change department. You just pick up so much knowledge by doing that. So, as an example, yes, I am within customer success, but I've also done account management and I've learned so much from that. I've done customer service and I've learned so much from that. It means that tomorrow, if I want to pivot into products, I may not know everything, but I have transferable skills because I am able to pivot and learn. So, I think pivot is my key word here.
I love that. So I'm gonna
Yeah,
definitely keep that. Really great
yeah, no,
advice.
that's great. And it kind of makes me think about something as well that I've always kind of said. One of the things that I think people get the most scared of is when change happens, right? We talked about the AI stuff, or just in your career, in your organization. There's shakeups, leadership changes, which happens all the time. And I think a lot of people get kind of pretty passive when that happens. Okay, let's see, how this all shakes out, what will happen, kind of what will happen with me, that whole mindset around it. But I've always found those as the best opportunities to really leapfrog in your career and take huge steps much faster, because there's a vacuum and people look to people that are proactive and everything around it. I'm curious kind of how you think about that, because again, change is so constant, like we especially in CS. How do you kind of approach it? Do you have any examples from your own career where there's been, change or turmoil where you use as an opportunity versus something to maybe fear?
Yeah, I think being scared of change is completely normal, right? But it also just means that there's so much room for growth and opportunity. I always heard the saying, I think when I was younger, where it's if you're uncomfortable, it's because you're learning. And I think that's such a beautiful thing. And that comes with change. So being uncomfortable just means that there's so many things that you're not used to, but it's a beautiful process. It will be tricky, but it's putting yourself in a position where you're going to learn so much that when you come out of it, you're going to feel like this completely new person. And it doesn't just go for professional life, it also goes to your personal life. You could be going through this thing at work and notice that all of the things that you're learning here can actually be applied in your personal life as well. So I think when it comes to change, I would always say, look, think of this as a new opportunity. You've got a water bottle that's completely empty. You're filling it up with all this knowledge, and you're going to get a full water bottle that you can hand over to someone else at a later stage. So it's not just about
Mhm.
learning for yourself, but also being able to teach other people everything that you've gone through. So that's the way I approach change, really. It's understanding what the pain points are, how we can lead you to, being more adaptable with the change, and understanding how it's going to, make you a better person because you're going to learn so much from it as well.
I think that's
Mm.
great advice for sure. And maybe to the advice point, what is kind of, because I think that's really good advice. What is the best advice that you've got, in your career? Whether that's at the start of the career or at later stage. Do you have anything to share there?
I think it would once again be the pivot situation.
Mm,
What I mentioned before. It's just I think I've been in a position where I always know when to leave, and you can see that within my career
Mm.
trajectory. I just know when something's not serving me, or when I just don't align with the way things are moving. And because of that, I've always found myself in a better position than what I've left off, whether it's financially or from a learning perspective. So it's just understanding, if something's not serving you, it's okay to move on and find something else. So pivot again is what I'd say.
yeah, yeah, no, that makes sense. But
Wow.
I think it's hard for people to pivot. Like, how do you kind of get to that point, right? Because I think in itself, it's very good advice, right? Pivot, but you see a lot of people kind of a little bit checked out or stay too long because loyalties or other different reasons, right? But how do you, like, what is it for you that kind of determines, okay, now I need to pivot, and this is the time to do it before again it gets too stale, or before you're just kind of checked out or something else interferes there, because that's, I think, a pretty hard thing to actually do in reality for people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of the trickiest things to do, but once you set it in motion, you'll find it easier. But I think one of the things that sometimes triggers me to pivot is I feel like I'm not learning anything new, or things become a little bit stagnant. And you don't actually realize until you get put into a difficult situation or a completely different situation with a customer, and you're thinking, well, I don't really know how to approach this. And I feel like I just don't know what direction to take sometimes. So sometimes it is stepping into uncomfortability within your actual role, and understanding that you don't actually have anywhere else to grow or learn from that situation. And it could be a sidestep. Sometimes it could be just moving into a different role to learn more. It could be changing organizations altogether. But I would say it's the learning aspect. It's challenging yourself to know that you can do better in terms of learning, or you can also get into a position where you feel like, I'm now teaching a lot of people how to do my role. Maybe it means that I should look into leadership, for example, and create a different path for myself. So it depends on what your motivator is and what your drive is. If you feel like nothing is driving you anymore, then time to pivot. If you think like you've become almost like a coach within the organization, maybe it's time to pivot there as well. So it really depends on what your driver is what I'd say.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Love that.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, amazing. So we've now gotten to the kind of the final part of our conversation. It's been action packed with so many great insights. And what we typically like to do, as you might know, at the end of these conversations, is do quick kind of rapid fire questions. Nothing too hard, hopefully, or too difficult to answer. But we'd love to do our lightning round here at the end. So feel ready for that part?
I'm ready.
Okay, great. And we'll start off easy as usual. So, what's your favorite content to consume right now? Book, podcast, whatever it might be.
Oh, I love books and podcasts, so this is a very tricky one for me. A mixture of both. I think in terms of books, I actually have two favorites. So I've got The Alchemist, and I love it
Mm.
because it basically takes you through a whole journey, and it explains that the journey sometimes is more important than the end goal itself. And I think that relates to CS sometimes a little bit. So I love that book. The second one is actually Atomic Habits. And
Mhm.
I like that because it's almost like navigating change almost. How do you get to the other side? And it's literally by doing all these tiny components that teach you how to be the version of yourself that you want to become. So I really like that book. But in terms of podcasts, aside from yourselves, I think there's a couple in there as well. One of them that I love is Women Who Launch, which is hosted by
Mm.
Rochelle Humes, and that is amazing for business. It's business-led women talking about how they got into the position that they're in. And there's a lot of learnings in there. There's so many different industries in there from people who, are CEOs, people who are individual contributors in there as well, which is really cool. And then I think another one is just We Need to Talk by Paul C. Brunson. I don't know if you've heard of that one, but that's been quite popular recently. And it's just people telling their life stories. And I think it just gives you so much respect for people because you don't understand what people are going through sometimes and they still, show up a brave face. And it's like that with our customers sometimes. We need to understand that sometimes they're pushing back a little bit because they've got a lot going on. So yeah, it just opens up your eyes to what people are going through.
Amazing, great recommendations. Alchemist is one of my favorite books as well, Paulo Coelho. So great call out there. Awesome. All right. So next question: any favorite people to follow or take inspiration from that you'd recommend?
Yeah, so many, so many, but I'll give you what I think. My favorite is Miranda Duskowski. I actually worked with her, and I think she's amazing at keeping ahead of the trend. I always find that she does something, and at the moment you're thinking, well, why would she do that? And then it makes sense 3 months after, and you're like, you're ahead of the trend. So I love following her, and she just breaks things down so easily. Yeah, fantastic person. I think another person as well is Maria Scobie Pillay, I think is her surname. And she's fantastic at building community within CS itself. So she's been great at leading women in customer success, putting people in a position where you get to mentor people and just give people access to information. And then lastly, I would say Mohammed Al-Kak, of course, for the community
Mhm.
building in the Middle East. It's something that we don't really have out here. And I think without him, we wouldn't be as connected. And I wouldn't have met Ivy, for example, without him. So he's just
Mhm.
been great at connecting people and just giving people knowledge as well.
Beautiful. Great
Yeah.
recommendations there as well. Next question is: any great idea or concept that you've learned about or heard lately? It could be big or small, but something that really kind of caught your attention or you found interesting. Could be CS or anything else.
Oh, that's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to think a new idea or concept. I feel like there's been so many new ideas that it's hard to keep up, right? I'll tell you what, something that is quite new to me, which probably isn't as new to other people, was actually hearing you in the Successify event talking about agentic AI. I knew it was coming, but I didn't realize it was here already and the impact that it's having. I actually really like it because I used to use Intercom quite a lot, Zendesk and all the other tools under the sun. And actually having agentic AI, I can see how much of an impact that's going to have, not just on customer service teams, but customer
Mhm.
success teams as well. So I think that's one that I want to keep an eye on to understand a little bit better and then hopefully implement myself moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. A lot there for sure.
Jamisa, I'm going to ask you my favorite question to ask. What is
Okay.
one life philosophy you like to live by?
I'd say probably make room for the life that you want. Sometimes we feel a little bit unsure of life or unsure why things are happening a certain way, it could be maybe that you're applying for a new job and you don't get it and you're thinking, oh gosh, why did this happen? But I always think it's because something better is coming and it just doesn't serve you. So I'd always say just make room for the life that you want. Make sure that you're getting rid of anything that doesn't serve you, but also doing the work to actually get to the point where you want to be at.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
On the weekend, when you are trying to decompress, what can people find you doing?
Oh, I do a lot of things. That's the problem. Um, outside of traveling all the time, anyone that knows me knows that I travel all the time. There's a running joke in the office that I have no annual leave because I'm always traveling. Outside of that, I love to dance. I've been dancing for probably 4 or 5 years now. So love going to dance classes, love photography as well. So love doing that. And yeah, just a lot of like activities and sports. I love going to circuits class every Sunday and running, even though I'm not great at it. But I think that's the beauty of life, just trying things that you're not good at.
No, I love that. I love that. And I've seen your dance moves, so I know you got it for sure.
I do
um,
very
and Jamisa, for anybody that is trying to connect with you, what is the best way of connecting with you?
Yeah, so two different ways. One is through LinkedIn. You can find me under Jomilsa Sousa, and then through my website as well, which is www.thesuccessstudio.coach. So you can contact me there.
Okay.
Awesome.
Amazing, Jamisa. Well, we have come to the very end of the podcast. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing so much of the knowledge that you have acquired these past few years. I know there's a lot of our listeners that are going to be very inspired just to listen from you.
Yes, thank you, Jamil. So it's been a pleasure having you on.
Amazing. Thank you both so much. It's been amazing. Appreciate it.
We want to thank our sponsors for supporting the Sussex Revenue podcast. RevSetter is the #1 customer success and management platform in the Middle East region, offering global capabilities mixed with regional solutions that helps your CS, account management, and go-to-market teams 10x efficiency, improve customer experience, and turbocharge customer retention rates.
And thank you to Medlify, a leading marketplace. Workers and employers in the healthcare space needs and demands meet, create benefits for both sides. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time.